Hi, I'm Ryan Szymanski, curator for Battleship New Jersey Museum and Memorial. Today, we are in Chief's Lounge, very close to the stern of the ship, and right behind me is where the portrait of Chief Michael Gorchinski should be hanging. Now, this space is not on the tour route, and so that portrait's been taken down and placed in an exhibit that is on the tour route that you can visit when you come in to see the ship. Because today is the 41st anniversary of the burial services of Chief Michael Gorchinski. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that today. So first of all, by the time you're watching this, it is no longer today, it is tomorrow. So yesterday, on May the 4th, is the day that Chief Michael Gorchinski is buried at sea from the stern of Battleship New Jersey. Chief Gorchinski is one of only 2 Battleship New Jersey sailors killed in action. Seaman Robert Osterwin is killed in action while on board the ship during the Korean War in 1951. Chief Michael Gorchinski flies off of the ship in October of 1983 while the ship is off the coast of Beirut, Lebanon. He is working on the Marines' electronic equipment. He is a chief electronics technician and had the equipment that they needed to get their stuff working again. He missed the helicopter back to the ship and so was spending the night in the Marine Corps barracks and then planning to catch the helicopter out of the international airport back to the battleship the next morning. That was the day that the barracks was bombed, and he was one of over 240 service members who was killed in the bombing. For today's video, we want to talk a little bit about what happened from there, and some of this is going to be generic. We're going to talk about it in the context of Chief Gorchinski. However, we don't have the specifics for him, and then some of it will be kind of specific to him when we get to the end and talk about his funeral on board the ship. So a lot of this is relatively standard to service members, but we're going to be using his name as that service member who this ship has a connection to. On October 23rd, 1983, in the morning while most people were still in bed, the barracks is bombed, which results in rubble crushing many of the 240 victims. Within 24 hours, Battleship New Jersey and other local assets in the area, other ships, squadrons, things like that, contributed personnel to help with rescue efforts. Battleship New Jersey's doctor is flown ashore along with much of the Marine detachment to pull security. Over the coming days, Battleship New Jersey sailors will volunteer to go ashore and help clear rubble, at first hoping to be able to save people, later on to help recover the bodies. As human remains are recovered, they're being flown from Lebanon to Rhine, Main Air Force Base, which has a morgue, which is near Frankfurt in Germany. That's one of the major Air Force bases that serves as an embarkation-debarkation point for service members traveling from the United States to Europe, Africa, the Middle East. For at least 3 weeks, bodies were coming into the morgue there, and that's where they were doing initial identification. From Rhine, Main, the bodies were flown to probably, almost certainly, Dover Air Force Base. Today, Dover is the only port mortuary where bodies of service members are flown into the country. However, in 1983, Travis Air Force Base in California was also used. My suspicion is Travis would have been for folks coming in from Pacific, Australia type areas, and Europe, Middle East, Africa would be flying in through Dover. So I suspect the bodies are all coming into Dover. The only reason why I even bring up that Travis was still used as a port mortuary during this time is because Battleship New Jersey is a Pacific Fleet battleship. She's home ported in Long Beach, so there is a chance that his body was taken there possibly, or went from Dover to there. Not entirely. Like I said, this part of it is more the general than the specifics of Gorchinski. By October 29th, just 4 days after the initial bombing, some of the bodies have already started to arrive in Dover. So it seems like they're being moved in groups and it's not all at one time. Dover is where bodies would be prepared for their funerals. So this would involve embalming, and typically military embalmings use 2 to 5 times as concentrated a solution of formaldehyde as a traditional morgue, because oftentimes military funerals are delayed, so the body has to be preserved for a longer period of time. In this case, however, military funerals sometimes include viewing the bodies, but often, due to the circumstances of the loss, that cannot happen. So in Chief Gorchinski's case, we know that his family chose to have his body cremated. And I'm not sure if that is something that he and his family had discussed ahead of time, or if his next of kin made that determination, or if the determination was made on the recommendation of the mortuary staff at Dover or Travis. We really don't have a lot of information on that, but these are some of the decisions that are made at this stage in the process. In November 1983, the ship's company held a memorial service for Chief Gorchinski on board. However, final funeral services were held off until May 4th of 1984. We'll come back to that in a second. Since the Battle of the Idrang Valley during the Vietnam War, the U.S. military has had policies on notifying next of kin about the loss of their loved one. I'm going to talk about the current policy because that's what I was able to find information on. It was likely very similar in 1983. Typically, a 4-man team is sent to notify the next of kin. This would be a casualty affairs calls officer, a chaplain, a medic, and a driver. The driver typically stays in the car. The medic is there in case there's a fainting spell or some other medical event brought on by the delivery of the news. And of course, the casualty calls officer and the chaplain are there to deliver the news. This is always attempted to be done in person within 4 hours of finding out, of identifying the person and finding out about their death, so that the news is passed on as quickly as possible. Wider publication of the news of the death of a loved one is withheld for at least 24 hours after the family has been notified, so that they find out first in person from the military and not hear about it on the news or find out about it from somewhere else. And so that they then have time to pass it on to other members of the family. I should say notification is made within 4 hours, assuming it is a reasonable time of day within 4 hours. So usually these sorts of calls take place between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. If that 4-hour window falls outside of that, then it might be extended a little bit longer. New Jersey's stay off the coast of Lebanon had been extended indefinitely over the fall of 1983. The family chose to follow the naval custom of committing his body to the sea. Chief Gorchinski, of course, is a career Navy sailor. And you have to imagine that there was some discussion between the family, and I imagine the casualty assistance calls folks were playing intermediary here, and ship's company, which also wanted to participate in his funeral services. And it was decided that when the ship returned to her home port, they would commit his body from the ship. So, on May 4th, 1984, one day before Battleship New Jersey returned to her home port of Long Beach after the longest post-World War II deployment of any vessel, a period of approximately 11 months, the last thing that the crew did before coming into home port was the funeral services for Chief Gorchinski. His wife was flown out to the battleship along with the cremains of Chief Gorchinski. Recently we've been researching the ship's Lebanese Civil War deployment, which again is historic for being the longest post-World War II deployment of a warship, at around 11 months long. And so we're going to have more content about that in the future on the channel. Battleship New Jersey receives operating support from the New Jersey Department of State, also from a number of other businesses and private individuals like yourselves. We really appreciate your support. There's a link in the description below if you'd like to donate to support the museum. You can also support us or by liking, sharing, and subscribing so more people find out about the museum, our channel, and our crew. Thanks for watching.